There's been a coup. We don't have any resemblance to a government that believes in a republic. We don't have honest money. We don't have integrity. We don't even have people in Washington that even pretends that you're supposed to tell the truth. Remember just recently there was a congressperson that won, and he won by putting on his resume just a bunch of lies. and the other ones got hysterical. The other congressman telling lies like this. And I got to thinking, well, how many of these people that were complaining about this guy telling lies, how many of them lied when they raised their hand up and swore to uphold the Constitution? Now, that's a lie that really has consequences. Actually, you could probably make fun and make a little joke because his jokes weren't, everybody knew he was fibbing, but the real lies are being told, and that is our big problem. But I do believe there has been a coup, and it's been taken over. And if I want to just put the date in my mind. And anybody could pick probably any date in the last 100 years. But I have picked November 22nd, 1963.
What happened on that day?
That was the day Kennedy was murdered by our government.
Wow.
By the CIA.
So there's been a coup. We don't have any resemblance to a government that believes in a republic. And that coup began when Kennedy was killed by our government, killed by the CIA, end of quote. So I'm pretty sure we're going to dive into this next because I've been thinking about this clip quite a bit. And on top of that, I stumbled into some interesting information regarding this, and it kind of blew my mind. So that's just a little preview of the next video. However, we are still going to talk about this coup d'etat in one respect. Now, personally, I believe that we are in the culmination phase of this 1963 coup. Yes, I believe that we're in the final stage of this grand plan. Now, all of this ties into our main topic tonight, the largest land grab in history. Their plan to monetize nature, Agenda 2030, and finally, their plan to implement a technocratic system. So did you know that technocracy in the 1930s was defined as the science of social engineering? And man oh man, did they hit the nail on the head with that one. A quote from Hunter S. Thompson. This country has been having a nationwide nervous breakdown since 9/11. A nation of people suddenly broke. The market economy goes to shit. And they are threatened on every side by an unknown, sinister enemy, end of quote. Yes, we have in fact become guinea pigs in a ruthlessly calculated, carefully orchestrated, chillingly cold-blooded experiment in how to control a population. And they're doing so with little pushback from the masses. This is mind control in its most sinister form. With alarming regularity, the nation is being subjected to a spate of violence that terrorizes the public, destabilizes the country, and gives the government greater justification to crack down, lock down, and of course institute even more authoritarian policies for the so-called sake of quote-unquote national security. However, that is not all. No, it is not. And that's because we don't just have to worry about the radicalization of mentally unstable people by the feds. No, we also have to worry about the deliberate destruction of the ecosystem and critical infrastructure such as water systems and food security. So we've talked about how I believe we have three possibilities. Number one, the disasters are true accidents, which I don't believe. Number two, we've talked about how this could be retaliation for the proxy war, and of course, it's becoming a hot war. Or number three, it is a deliberate action by our own government for the sake of their overall plan for the future. And so tonight, we're gonna try to talk about option number three. Could all of the chaos and destruction be a part of an effort to further their control over the masses and to usher in their new technocratic system? After watching this video, you might conclude that it is, but maybe not. As always, make your own conclusion. Anyway, this is the main topic for the video, and originally it came from a comment on Rumble. The subscriber, Grateful, also posed a few really interesting points. So they started off by asking my take on this, but then they added this. Number one, all the toxic spills could lead to contaminated land, which leads to no growing and gives the EPA and FEMA the right to claim the land as their own. Number two, Bill Gates, of course, as we know, is acquiring water treatment plants and farmland. And then we have Walmart. They are making sure to buy up private land with water sources. And then number three, bottled water is now contaminated with iron, mercury, graphene oxide, heavy metals, and more, Nestle and Dasani being some of the worst. So yes, in my opinion, there is an overall plan attached to this, sinister agenda. Now, lucky for us, actually, scratch that, we are woefully unlucky in this regard because we have quite a few examples that signify that this is in fact deliberate, and some of those examples came in the last week. So, in regular fashion, we have to set the stage a bit. The main aspect I want to try to illuminate is the broader agenda. But first, let's try to back up a little bit. Has anyone figured out why they continually blur out the presidential seal when Biden does an appearance? They just did it again during his Easter event. This is very strange to me, but let me know if there's an explanation. However, if we don't have an official explanation that makes sense, I personally believe it's because of the stakeholder capitalism model. They want to destroy the United States and merge with international corporations, ending up with this corporatist global fascist system. I mean, that's what it is. And it's actually a common belief among the powers that be. Here's a clip of John Brennan, the old CIA director, who's corrupt as shit. And well, here he is talking about how they want to dissolve the nation state. That's their ultimate goal.
And so just the authority of nation states and governments, I think, is being looked at in a different way than it did just 20 years ago. And so this is one of the things that we really have to be able to understand and anticipate and work with foreign governments. Because if you're going to have basically a dissolution of the nation-state structure that we've had for centuries, it's really going to be even a more chaotic world.
Yes, they want one single global system. The United States is directly in the way of that. Yes, they are trying, rather desperately, to preemptively massage the masses into subjugation. However, it does go well beyond just the disasters that we've been seeing. As we have talked about before, I believe that all of the cities on Google's, smart city list or whatever, you know what I'm talking about, the cities that are going to move into this technocratic security state. Well, personally, I believe that they're allowing violent crime to run rampant in an effort to force the population to clamor for peace at all costs. And we are starting to see a bit of this come to fruition. For example, New York City, who was on that smart city list along with 24 other big cities, and well, they are becoming notorious for their corrupted judicial system. Targeting law-abiding citizens who defend themselves while allowing violent criminals to get a free pass. And that's just one side component. Let's take an example that just happened. So, a guy was arrested for getting into a shootout with the cops. His bail was reduced and he was released. And then over Easter, he shot some kid, murdered him. And then of course we got the infamous smoke shop video that was making its way around social media. So these two guys got into an argument. As the guy turned to leave the store, the dude that we're talking about shot him in the neck or the head. However, it doesn't stop there. No, as he struggled to get up, it's clearly on video, the gunman shot him point blank in the back of the head just to finish him off. A shootout with the cops was not enough. If he was in prison where he should be, well, those two lives would probably still be walking the earth. This is seemingly the DA's mission, Alvin Bragg. So, I know, I'm getting somewhere with this, bear with me. To tie this into the original concept, as a result of the violent crime, New York City finally unveiled their quote-unquote snitch bots. The mayor said, and I quote, "If competition doesn't push us over the edge, it will be peace and safety. If we are not willing to move forward and use technology on how to properly keep cities safe, then you will not keep up with those doing harmful things," end of quote. So, the only way to get peace and safety, well, you have to initiate a technocratic security state. As I said in the previous video, you better start believing in cyberpunk dystopias because you're in one. So, okay, we have that manipulation going on in the background as major cities get ready for this smart city, 15-minute city push. It's all a plan. I mean, come on, the levels of incompetence and ignorance in relation to violent crime is off the charts, but I personally believe that they cannot be that stupid. Therefore, I gotta say, it's gotta be malicious. This is all about this new world order that they want to establish. However, let's move on to the main power play. The destruction of infrastructure and land so they can swoop in and claim it. Once again, we do have to set the stage a little bit by understanding their mentality, their vicious nature, and their indifference to suffering. So, last week, JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon says that the government should seize private property so they can build wind and solar farms. Yes, they want to seize private property so they can move forward with their agenda. Now, this is something that Klaus Schwab and all the Davos elite talk about quite a bit, and it's insane. However, this mentality, as we were just talking about, is commonplace among these foolish tyrants. On this channel, we've talked a lot about the depopulation agenda, how world leaders consistently say that we need to reduce the population to about 1 or 2 billion people, and I might add, that's a lot of dead people just to get down to that number. I mean, Jesus, you know? So we do have some recent examples. For this, it's pretty interesting. If you call these chemtrails, you're a loon, a crazy conspiracy theorist. However, if you call them stratospheric aerosol injections, well then, you good sir are an intellectual. Despite the fact that, it's the same damn thing, but whatever. Anyway, this is my point. Check out this clip. These are people who are working on Bill Gates' stratospheric aerosol injection plan. Just listen to how some of the people on the panel are so indifferent about killing thousands and thousands of people per year. They don't care. Now I am going to give some credit to the main person speaking in this though, as he seems to be the only one considering the moral implications of such a plan. However, this guy will cave to the peer pressure for sure. On the panel is David Keith, a climate advisor to Bill Gates, and he admits that geo-engineering, stratospheric aerosol injections, are going to kill many tens of thousands of people per year.
Can I leap in? This is a really important moral point. So if I made a decision, or if there was a collective decision to do a geoengineering program, and you put, say, the kind of program I think makes more sense to put about 1 million tons a year in, but let's say, you might end up killing many tens of thousands of people a year as a direct result of that decision. I think that has moral consequences. I don't sweep it under the rug. So this is a case where I take this much differently from Alan and think it's a much more serious issue. Now, it's true that as part of doing that, you would hope that the overall benefits of human mortality would be so that you would save many, many more people than that. But the fact that you would save more people than you killed doesn't mean there's no moral impact of making a decision that directly kills people. And I think that we who talk about this have a duty to be clear-eyed about the direct risks involved in doing it.
I actually think one of the most important questions we heard from was the question about acute triggers, and sort of. I think we've seen this in this country with Sandy, where climate change for at least a little while came back on the political radar screen because of extreme weather, whether it was actually caused or affected by climate change or not.
This is the mentality for the greater good. Killing tens of thousands of people, innocent people, is just the cost to quote-unquote improving the world, which of course it does no such thing.
It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
Yeah, that's Lyndon Johnson, also a part of that 1963 coup, but we'll talk about that very soon. Yes, as you just heard, he who controls the weather controls the world. Anyway, that's their mentality. Yes, it is time to let your voices be heard, and you may ask why.
Why? Because fuck them, that's why.
Now okay, let's get into the disasters that just happened. Of course, it aids in their plan to grab as much land as possible and destroy food security. So, thousands of people were evacuated after a fire broke out at a plastic recycling facility in Indiana, sending a towering plume of what officials said was, and I quote, definitely toxic, smoke into the air. Now on top of that, approximately 18,000 cows were killed and one person was critically injured in an explosion on a dairy farm in Texas. This happened on Monday. Now the scenes do look pretty apocalyptic, and there were actually some really interesting comments on this, and I'll highlight a few real quick, but you're going to have to fact check me on this because I did not have time as I just put this in on a whim, and on top of that, I don't know much about dairy farms. However, and I quote, I grew up in Dimmitt, have family there and know that place well. I can absolutely tell you this, there is nothing there that could have caused such an explosion. This was no accident. That was most likely an ammonia nitrate explosion, and dairy farms don't use this stuff. Every single crop grown does though, and the stuff is pretty easy to get. Do you remember Norman, Oklahoma? So then we had a different quote. As a former dairy farmer, dairy farms don't have combustibles as part of their operations outside of a tractor. You might as well say a tree farm had a massive oil spill, and okay then. Alright. Is anyone familiar with dairy farms? Let me know what's good on this. But anyway, let's get into the overall plan. I believe there's two separate categories we have to break this concept into. The first is naturally greed, and the second one is power.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, but we are in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution, which accelerates global change. Global energy systems, food systems, and supply chains will be deeply affected. It means investing into a greener and therefore more sustainable economy. Climate change can lead to an extinction of large parts of our global population.
How about you eating the bugs?
Insects may be on our menu.
Bugs for dinner.
Eating insects.
In a couple of years, business could well be hopping.
Do the people in charge really want us to eat bugs?
Ancient elites were
conspiracy people, they invent anything you can think of, but no, it's complete nonsense.
The company is called Insect. This is an insect protein just been approved by the EU.
Klaus Schwab said, "We have infiltrated the governments of the Netherlands." And he's
quite open about it.
He's open about it, so no conspiracy theory whatsoever.
Nobody forces people to eat insects.
Voor miljoenen mensen ter wereld voor de dagelijkse voedselvoorziening. Onze overheid heeft zich gekeerd tegen haar eigen bevolking. En zo is het.
I'm Nicole Kidman, and I am going to eat a 4-course meal of bugs.
I will not eat the bug. I will not eat the bug.
So, why don't we start with greed? So, we are on the precipice of the largest land grab in history, well, modern history, and the powers that be have been working on this for at least 50 years, more like 70. Actually, probably more. Anyway, starting with the Trilateral Commission's so-called New International Economic Order in 1973. Those who say they're going to save the world are the very ones who are destroying it. Nature will be commodified and financialized into a scientific dictatorship, aka technocracy. Now, this story is so big that few can really wrap their heads around it, and personally, I have a tough time too. Especially when trying to compile it into like a 20 or 25 minute video. There is a lot to go over. Anyway, this needs to stop. It is real, there is a clear plan, and there is a clear and present danger to all of us. It is going to affect every human on planet Earth. Now, if you have been following the channel for a while, we've actually discussed this overall plan to satiate their greed when we examined the COP27 event. And of course, the main theme for that climate change event was monetizing nature. Again, this has been a plan for a long time. It all began with the creation of a new asset category called NAC. It stands for Natural Asset Companies. Now perhaps you are like me, and you believe that nature should never become a commodity that's bought and sold by the powerful few, then you should keep watching. If you are an establishment shill, you won't like what comes next, because you are being lied to by the pariahs you call political heroes. Yes, the fact is that the very wealthy minority feel like they have a right to effectively barcode nature. Their greed and arrogance is quite breathtaking, though it's not at all surprising when you look at what's been happening over the past few years. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the creation of this new carbon-based economy, carbon markets, and how it ties into the central bank digital currency, social credit scores, all tied to your digital ID. This is the overall infrastructure that's laid out to make this tyrannical system tick. So we have this idea for a new economy that is entirely built off the backs of exploitation and surveillance. And well, it's been given a euphemistic name, nature's economy. Doesn't that sound nice? Well, it's not, trust me. They are currently pitching this as the only alternative to the traditional economy. In this graphic right here, you can clearly see their motivation. As stated, it's greed. So in the first image, we have the traditional economy. We have 90 trillion in goods and services, and it's coupled with an asset value of $512 trillion. And then, of course, the second image, we have the new nature economy, which would provide 125 trillion in goods and services with an asset value of 4,000 trillion. Okay then, a number so big that it sounds ridiculous, and that's because it is ridiculous in a way. This is what happens when they are allowed to monetize nature and charge you for the sole reason that you exist. What a plan, what a plan. And do you believe that they aren't going to go after that $4,000 trillion? It blows my mind that there are people who believe that they are not going to go after this $4,000 trillion. Oh, but they are. Your rights and your life do not matter when dealing with that much money and power. I mean, they're sociopaths, alright? So the graph we were looking at is from the Intrinsic Exchange, and get this, one of their main investors is none other than the Rockefeller Foundation. Oh, what a coincidence. The same ones who wrote the plan America 2050. And we have talked about this document in the past, a few times. This is their plan for mega regions, isolating the masses into massive surveillance centers, smart cities, banning private property and declaring large swaths of the US as prohibited federal land. And of course, it's the same family, the Rockefellers, who have been controlling US politics for well over a century. Oh, it makes you feel warm inside, huh? So how does this new asset category, NAC, plan to do this? Well, these new NACs are going to act a bit like real estate agents for Mother Nature. Imagine a situation where a company is able to pick an area of nature, assign it a price, disenfranchise any prior claimants, take ownership, and then sell pieces of that land, lake, ocean, mountain to institutional shareholders, specifically multinational corporations, who of course funded the NAC in the first place. Yes, it is all a game. As the late great George Carlin said, the table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. And yes it is. Now, if we could be assured that all NACs will be conscious corporates, they may well be the way to steward and safeguard our future. However, history, as well as current events, speaks to a very different outcome. And that's because these people are tyrannical. So they say, and I quote, NACs will attempt to assign value to services such as carbon retention, freshwater generation, pest control, groundwater storage, and erosion prevention. It's all going to be priced and intrinsically provided by natural resources, end of quote. So, okay, here are some of the ways in which these quote-unquote green actions already net billions and billions of dollars. Of course, we've talked about carbon offsetting and biodiversity offsets before, and large corporations such as BlackRock, JP Morgan, and Disney are investing significant amounts of money in this area. And then they came out with green bonds. From there, we have the extraction of natural resources, the destruction of natural habitats to grow food, greenwashing and seed patents, which we've actually talked about as well. Bill Gates is monopolizing the seed market already. They also want to patent genetically modified and engineered plants and animals. And of course, they want to purchase large swaths of agricultural land. You know, large investors such as Bill Gates are making huge inroads into this area, and we're going to talk about that in a second. So, as I was putting the video together, we got some breaking news. It's Saturday around 5 p.m., and unfortunately for us, it fits right into our topic, so I'm going to toss it in here. And I quote, a train carrying hazardous materials has derailed and caught fire near Rockwood, Maine. Yes, a catastrophic event has unfolded, as a train transporting hazardous materials has derailed and subsequently caught fire. This situation has prompted the dispatch of multiple emergency crews, including hazmat, to the scene. Authorities have told residents to stay away, and officially they're saying that this is pretty bad, considering the event took place right near Moosehead Lake, which is one of the biggest freshwater bodies in the entire state. So yeah, you tell me. Just another coincidence, huh? Anyway, let's get back to the video. So, okay, it is this weaponized philanthropy that Bill Gates launched in 1994, and if you remember, he did so he could resuscitate his reputation after his antitrust cases, which exposed him as a lying, cheating, thieving manipulator intent on felonious monopoly control over global information conduits. Gates has also invested $36 billion into the Gates Foundation, which has a value of $46.9 billion. The foundation has given away only $23.6 billion in charitable grants, and these quote-unquote gifts include billions in tax-deductible donations to companies in which Gates is invested in, such as Merck, GlaxoSmithKline, Novartis, and Sanofi. So it's not really a secret that Bill Gates devised this scheme to form a foundation that shelters his income and allows him to leverage taxpayer dollars by investing the foundation's earnings into projects that multiply his own wealth. Also, it expands his power and public prestige. And the kicker is that he's doing this all while avoiding taxes. And you know, Jeff Bezos took a page out of the Bill Gates playbook. Recently, the media was up in arms because he donated billions to save the earth. Well, where did he donate that money? He donated it to the Bezos Earth Fund, effectively sheltering billions from tax law. This is the point. It's all a game, a corrupt game. But you know, all these dummies still praise these guys for trying to save the earth, which is really not what they're trying to do. But anyway, Bill Gates has deployed his foundation as pretty much the embodiment of his base instincts for monopoly and control. A vehicle for ruthless philanthrocapitalism. All this does is hijack public access and blurs the lines between corporate and public interest. Of course, all this does is cloak their greed and their insatiable need to dominate the world with this lofty, public-spirited rhetoric, and gives himself monopoly control over public health, our planet's life support systems, our economics, and people. Yes, I believe that Bill Gates has made his foundation a tool for consolidating the efforts of his fellow billionaires, his corrupted regulators, and his business partners from Big Pharma. However, that is not all. It also includes dirty energy, GMO food, telecom, and of course, big data. And of course, the bought and brain-dead journalists who collectively profit from this future dystopian world that they have arranged for us. Yes, Bill Gates and his cronies, toadies, and minions pump up the fear of pandemics, climate change, mass extinction, and offer up his vision of new technologies as the salvation, which only he possesses the genius to deploy. And of course, he would be the only one who could profit off of it. Well, you know, him and his buddies. Even as Bill Gates consolidates control over our health and food systems, Bill Gates is also promoting digitalized currency, central bank digital currency, calling these systems, and I quote, a global humanitarian priority. As you might know, Kissinger's final adjuration is, who controls the money can control the world. And, well, they plan to do that. Exactly that. So, Bill Gates, he's also funding ground and space-based 5G infrastructure, city-sized analytic centers, and biometric chips to mine and harvest our data and biodata, and just use it as mechanisms of surveillance, profit, and control. So on top of this, Bill Gates is also planning a satellite fleet that will be able to survey every square inch of the planet 24 hours a day. A system such as that will no doubt be useful should populations become restless with the political and economic issues that we face. Or, on the other hand, what if we become restless with the new systems that strip power away from citizens, shift wealth ever upward? What if we become restless with this, the fact that we have been doomed to meaningless, hopeless survival? Well, if that happens, Bill Gates has a surveillance system that can monitor every inch of the earth 24 hours a day. And yes, they would use it to quash dissent, because Bill Gates' foundation is tied to the WHO. It's tied to various world governments. The government, we are already in this corporatist system. Just so you know, public-private partnerships have already launched, basically. I mean, they have. I don't know. We're running out of time, man. This stuff is crazy. So yeah, my point is that Bill Gates has been using his cash to expand his power over global populations every single chance he gets. He's been doing this for years by buying up devalued assets at fire sale prices, and of course, maneuvering for monopoly control over public health, privatizing prisons, online education, and global communications. And he's been doing all of that while also promoting CBDCs, high-tech surveillance, data harvesting systems, and artificial intelligence. For a man obsessed with monopoly control, the opportunity to also dominate food production must seem irresistible. And it is. He can't help himself. So as you know, Bill Gates has bought over 242,000 acres of American farmland, and nearly 27,000 acres of other land across Louisiana, Arkansas, Nebraska, Arizona, Florida, Washington, and 18 other states. Let's talk about the Founding Fathers for a second. Thomas Jefferson believed that the success of America's exemplary struggle to supplant the yoke European feudalism with a noble experiment in self-governance, well, he believed that it depended on the perpetual control of the nation's land base by tens of thousands of independent farmers, each with a stake in our republic. So at best, Bill Gates' campaign to buy up as much land as possible is a signal that feudalism may again be in vogue. Now on the other side of the coin, at worst, his buying spree is a harbinger of something far more sinister, which is the control of global food supplies by a power-hungry megalomaniac with a Napoleon complex. And this is where we are. This is what we face. Overall, though, this is about something much, much bigger. This is the Great Reset. This plan has been in the works for 70 years, and really, I could make an argument that it goes back farther, at least to 1913. Yes, the fact remains. Global, unelected special interests have a vision of what your future is going to look like. And these international networks of power, ideally, they want you to blindly accept every aspect of your life being controlled by experts, with this system known as technocracy, or rule by experts, aka scientism. Yes, it is time to let your voices be heard, before we delve deeper into this neo-feudalistic system built on human suffering and subjugation. And that's because if we don't do anything, in the end, you'll own nothing, and you most certainly will not be happy. Once again, this is HelioWave. If you like the content, like, comment, and subscribe. Share the video if you want to. If you're in a position to, consider subscribing on Locals or Subscribestar. As always, make sure you disobey those true fascistas, and yes, I do hope you have a good night.